everyone, this is Daniel from Grizzly Kiki, and today we're going to be making another keto-friendly recipe. The recipe on the menu today is a keto pumpkin cheesecake with bourbon spiked whipped cream. This recipe is a combination of Emeril Lagasse's classic pumpkin cheesecake recipe and a keto vanilla wafer recipe courtesy of Inspector Gorgeous. And you can find the links to those recipes in the description box below, as well as my kind of Franken recipe that I've made to make it completely keto. So this recipe is a recipe that is actually near and dear to my heart because I have been making it for a little over 10 years now, almost every Thanksgiving. And yes, I know, it is not Thanksgiving, but I did have to make this recipe keto, so I had to test it to make sure that I was satisfied with it. So it's coming a little late, but it is still very holiday themed, so you can make it, you know, throughout the rest of the holidays and beyond because it's so tasty. The first step to making this recipe is actually to make the keto vanilla wafers that I got from Inspector Gorgeous, because those are going to form the crust for this cheesecake, as well as adding in some crushed pecans. I did that ahead of time because it's a little bit time consuming, but you'll get to see the results in just a few minutes. So after you've made your keto vanilla wafers and crushed them along with about a half a cup of pecans, you're going to take 1 stick of cubed butter and brown it on the stovetop over low heat in a small saucepan. So here's my cubed butter. I cubed this a couple of hours ago actually and let it sit out because I don't want to put very cold butter into a hot pan, because we're like browning or toasting the butter, we don't want it to burn. And it is something that you need to keep a very close eye on because it is a little tricky. So I'm just going to scoop my butter into the pot. So the idea of browning the butter I actually got from Sahil over at Headbanger's Kitchen, because he has an amazing peanut butter cookie recipe as part of a no-bake peanut butter cheesecake. He uses that for his crust. He suggests browning the butter to kind of give it an extra nutty flavor. And so you'll see as the butter's melting, you'll see it kind of separates a little bit, and those are just the milk solids. You can also scoop those out if you want a clearer butter, but that's if we're like making ghee, which we're not. So you're gonna wanna keep a very close eye on your butter, like I said, because it can burn very quickly. So when you're doing this, you don't wanna leave the kitchen. And once the butter is almost completely melted, I like to take a whisk and just help it along. And then I just check on it every, 30 seconds or so. I give it a look to make sure it's not burning. While my butter's bubbling, I'm sure that you have noticed this amazing t-shirt I'm wearing. It features our very good friend Pissi Miles, who is now known as the Impeachment Queen, and her very talented husband David Ayon designed this Grab 'em by the Pissi t-shirt, so make sure to go get yours at pissimiles.com. So once the butter starts to gurgle, kind of like your stomach when you're hungry, you're not going to want to take your eyes off of it because this is major browning time. And this is also, when I would just kind of start stirring it consistently so that you can see what's going on underneath so that it doesn't, unevenly brown. As you can see, the butter has become super frothy now, and it has a little brown color to it on the froth. So you're gonna just whisk it a little bit. And you can see that it has become slightly brown in color, you see there. So I'm gonna take this off of the flame and let it rest for like a minute while I get ready to pour it into our crust. Our butter is browned, and now we're ready to incorporate it into the vanilla wafer and pecan mixture so that we can create our cheesecake crust. So you're just gonna pour your brown butter into the middle of this little well I made here. And this is a great replacement for graham crackers, because that's what I would typically use. And you just want to use this fork to mix it all together, because we do want it to be a little sandy. I'm going to pull out my 9-inch springform pan that I've greased and also fitted on the bottom with a circle of parchment paper. While the pan is nonstick, I find that for this cheesecake you do need a sheet of parchment paper under it so that when you do release the whole thing from the ring, the springform pan base, otherwise it gets stuck and you can't really put it on a nice platter. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by filling the bottom of the springform pan with the crust mixture. Now that the bottom is all covered, we're gonna pop this in the fridge for 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes, depending on, you know, how cold your fridge or freezer are, so that it can solidify so that we won't have a problem when we're doing the sides. It's been about 3 minutes and the base of our cheesecake crust is now completely cold and set. You can see it's not really going anywhere. So now we can start working on the sides. And this part is really delicate because you have to press it up against the sides and roll while holding the pan on its side. And the more you pat it down, the less likely it is to kind of fall from the ceiling when you turn it upside down when you get to that part. I have very fond memories of this cheesecake, actually. Not only have I made it almost every year for the past 10 or 15 years, it was one of my mom's favorite Thanksgiving desserts that we would make. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, because after all, this is a homemade cheesecake. I typically like the crust to come all the way up the sides, but if it doesn't, it's okay. It'll give it, you know, this nice kind of rustic homemade look. So, as you can see, all of the pan is covered, and we're gonna put this in the freezer until we're ready to put the filling in. While our oven is preheating and our crust is setting, we're gonna put together the star of the show, which is this pumpkin cheesecake filling. So what I'm gonna do is put 2 pounds of cubed softened cream cheese in a mixing bowl. So we're gonna mix this with your hand mixer. So you do want it fluffy, like icing. Our cream cheese is nice and fluffy, and this is the point where we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of brown sugar substitute. Put that in. We're gonna give it another go with the mixer. Once the brown sugar substitute and the cream cheese are well incorporated, you're gonna add 6 large eggs, 1 at a time. After about the first 2 eggs, I like to scrape down the bowl again. Once the eggs are well blended in, just give your bowl another scrape. Next up is a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. After the heavy cream is in, we're going to add our dry ingredients. A teaspoon of vanilla, or a little more, and a pinch of salt. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, this is a pumpkin cheesecake, where the heck is the pumpkin? It's coming, I promise. We're going to add to this mixture an entire can that's 15 ounces of pumpkin puree. The last thing that I'm going to add to this is 2 ounces of whiskey Scotch or bourbon, whichever one you prefer. All right, there is our completed pumpkin cheesecake filling. So the crust is completely set. We're going to very carefully pour the filling into the crust. Okay, now we're ready to put this baby in the oven. This is going to go into a 350-degree oven for about an hour and 15 minutes, or until the center is set and some sort of tool comes out clean. I have this, like an actual cake tester, as it says there. If it doesn't come out clean, you can cover the springform pan in foil, continue cooking it in like 5 to 10 minute increments, and just testing through the foil. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to put the springform pan on this sheet pan. What we're gonna make now is the bourbon spiked whipped cream. And this is something that you want to do the morning of or right before you serve the cheesecake, because the whipped cream, if left overnight, it can deflate a little bit. And what I'm also going to be doing today for fun, it's the first time I'm doing it this way, is adding a little food coloring to maybe make it orange. One of the most important parts of making a good whipped cream is to do it in a pre-chilled metal or glass mixing bowl. So I've had this metal bowl in the freezer for about an hour. So without further ado, we're gonna make our whipped cream. So I just did that for about 20-30 seconds to get all of the ingredients mixed together, and now I'm gonna taste it to make sure that it's like as sweet as I want it, you know, that there's not too much alcohol taste or too much vanilla. Yeah, I could use a little more whiskey, I think. I would just kind of eyeball it. And give it another taste. One more splash of the whiskey. It's more than sweet enough, I think. That's perfect. Now let's add our food coloring. So let's see what they say here. So we can do 12 drops of yellow and 4 red. We'll see what we got. I think it needs a little more yellow. I think that should do it. Let's see. So see, it's fluffy, and when I lift up with the spatula, you see, it's not falling. So that's good. And there is our bourbon spiked whipped cream, or orange, orange colored bourbon spiked whipped cream. Okay. Little taste. It's very, very light, not heavy at all. The whiskey really comes through. It kind of like gets you in the back of the tongue a little bit. Very yummy. I'm gonna put this in the freezer just for a few minutes so it sets up a little more before I transfer it to its travel container for later. It has been about an hour and 55 minutes, and it is time to take the cheesecake out of the oven. I have to say, I think it looks pretty good. The top didn't crack, and I also let it cool for about 6 hours before I put it in the fridge so that it would settle. I think overall it looks great. So we took the cheesecake to Thanksgiving dinner, and it was an absolute hit. Everybody loved it, and we were lucky enough to get a shot of a slice of the cheesecake with the whipped cream before everybody in my family devoured it. My father was especially happy because he is diabetic and he was able to eat it without worrying about it spiking his blood sugar. So if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button below, share it with your friends and family, try the recipe out and let us know how it turned out for you, and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified every time we post a new video. So until next time, stay keto.